Alright, so the video gaming YouTube space is getting flooded now with videos on PirateSoftware's game Heartbound. Most of them are pure trash, bad faith reviews, and they're only using the game as a means to further dogpile on Pirate Software. Take, for example, quote-unquote He Mutahar over here, putting out 40-minute deep dives that barely show a minute or two of actual gameplay, and nothing else about the contents of the game. Like, what the fuck is this? Does this look like Heartbound to you? Or this? In short, a lot of yapping, nothing about the actual game. What a waste of fucking time. You know, I used to like this guy, but ever since the Pirate Software drama started, he's been sipping on that dumb bitch juice big time. Anyway, I played the game this morning, took around 5 hours of playing the game at a very relaxed pace, looking around and reading flavor text, not skipping dialogue, etc. I only did one route, which I assume was neutral or good, I'm not sure. I picked some evil choices, but most of them were good choices, I think. The game has controller support. For a second there I thought it didn't, because the guide in the in-game menu doesn't really show it. It only shows like keyboard and mouse control information. But it doesn't. It works fine with the controller. So the music, the game's music, it's pretty great. The tracks are beautiful. They don't get in the way, and they do a great job supporting the story that's being told. While the songs in Heartbound do not reach the same level of catchiness that the ones in Undertale do, they are still pretty damn good and really a joy to listen to. I would say it's easily an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, I would say. Good music. Regarding art direction, the game looks nice. It's I would say a step above an Undertale. But then again, most pixel games are above Undertale. Like, Undertale's focus has always been the storytelling and the music, and art style was always secondary. Right? In the case of Heartbound, you will definitely encounter better looking scenery than Undertale. However, if you're expecting anything like, let's say, Owlboy or Boost or I don't know, Axiom Verge, you'll be a bit disappointed. It's okay. The art is good. It looks good. It's serviceable. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't get in the way. It's pretty solid, and for that reason, I would rate it maybe an 8 out of 10. Now it's the difficult part, the gameplay. So the game mechanics, I would say, are probably the weakest link in Heartbound in terms of complexity and entertainment. There isn't much to speak of there in terms of gameplay, at least for the good/neutral route. Maybe the evil route has more combat, I don't know. So the game has a couple of boss fights, some fetch quests, a few mini games, nothing too fancy and nothing you'd want to do for like more than 10 minutes each. And I mean each type of activity. And I also have to warn viewers of, there's a puzzle in the first act that very likely you will not be able to solve due to it having a reference to tennis of all things. And this is all I'm going to say without spoiling. And this, I feel, is probably one of the biggest issues with Act 1, as I feel most players will be forced to look up the answer online and be disappointed, rather than having the satisfaction to solve it themselves. It could potentially be what is called a quit moment for a lot of players, meaning they will just stop playing the game because that is like a disappointing experience. And because this point is conceivably reachable within Steam's 2-hour refund window, it can even cause refunds from the players, right? Because they reach that quit moment, they haven't played for 2 hours yet, They're disappointed by the game, they will refund. It's just how it is. But there is a way to skip it, but even that way, I fear, for a younger audience, even that way is a bit obfuscated, and maybe the younger audience will not even know how to skip the puzzle, which makes things even worse. Undertale is pretty accessible to the younger audience, but I feel this puzzle specifically that Heartbound has is going to be an issue for the younger audience. So I would instead strongly advise Thor to make this puzzle fully optional and easily skippable, or significantly lower its difficulty. So all in all, I rate the gameplay a 5 out of 10, with the acknowledgement that gameplay is not really the focus in this genre of games. Even Undertale's gameplay, if I was to rate it, I would rate it a 7 out of 10 at best. And that's okay. It's not the focus of this types of games. But if gameplay is like super important to you, take this factor into account. The story. And this is a big one. So the writing, I would say, is okay. It's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. And I sometimes found myself amused by various jokes and nods and references in the game. Other times the jokes fell a bit flat. Maybe it's just me. It's subjective, you know. And in terms of entertainment / funny element, I would say the game is a 7 at that chapter. Right? It's pretty funny. It has funny tidbits and flavor texts all over the place if you take the time to look at every object and actually inspect it. There's funny descriptions everywhere. It's pretty amusing. But where I personally felt the game is falling short is at getting the player to care. It fails to trigger emotions, something the game it models, Undertale, excels at. So right now the story's probably halfway done, I would say, as the game stops around maybe halfway through the second act. You know, the game is in early access, it's not finished yet. And so far, it didn't really get me to care much about any of the characters. And without spoiling, I think the reason the game falls short at this aspect is in the way it introduces the characters to the player. You do not spend enough time with any of the characters compared to how much time you spend walking around and looking around for things. The interactions, although not a few, you interact quite a bit with various characters, they do not live for long enough to allow you to get attached to the characters and root for them and care about their needs, right? Take Toriel, for example, in Undertale. You spent a good amount of time with her in the beginning, right? At the beginning of the game. She takes your hand, guides you through the world, takes you to her home and takes care of you. She establishes herself as a mother figure and you inevitably get attached. This attachment is then successfully exploited later in the game, and I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who haven't played Undertale yet, which I highly recommend. So Heartbound fails to create these attachments, unfortunately, and this I feel is a critical flaw in a game such as Heartbound that models Undertale. Attachment and emotional connection with the player is what these games live for. So this is an issue that really needs to be addressed for the game to get past the stage of mediocrity. So a good example of this issue that Heartbound has with emotional connection is there is, in the second act, there is a romance mini story where you get introduced to the characters involved, but because you just met them and have no attachment to them at that point, it's not a story you care much about, and you do not end up caring about and rooting for the enamored character and as they attempt to confess their love. It's just not something that you care about, because they introduce the potential for romance, and then they immediately, the game immediately concludes it like very shortly after. It doesn't even allow you the time to get attached to the characters. So I feel like the characters themselves have a lot of potential, though. There are a few in the first act that have an aura of mystery to them that isn't really explored to its fullest potential. And then we move to Act 2 and get introduced to a completely new cast of characters with no mention to the Act 1 characters. With the exception of like a voice or something. I don't want to get into details. I don't want to spoil. But yeah, it's a lot of the characters in Act 1 are just thrown out the window. And then there's the Act 3, which only has like a minute of teaser gameplay. It's more like a cutscene that introduces the new area that is going to take place in. And I fear there will be yet a whole new cast of characters there rather than exploring the already introduced characters. So yeah, I hope Thor doesn't do that. I hope we get to explore in more details the characters in the first act and the second act, and I hope we stop introducing too many new characters and we focus on the existing characters and we focus on building that emotional connection with them. So I believe this failure to allow characters to exist alongside the player for a long period of time stems from the way the story is written and planned. What do I mean by that? Well, with the exception of the main story, which of course is designed to span for the entirety of the game, right? It spans multiple acts. No other side stories seem to develop in parallel, and no other secondary characters seem to be on a path of growth and self-discovery alongside the main character. Because of this, most of the time it feels like you, the player, are alone on the journey, with nobody else to accompany you or to get attached to, right? So because of that, the game sort of fails to connect with you, the player, at an emotional level. As a result, I would rate the entirety of Heartbound at a solid 7 out of 10. And I strongly, strongly, strongly urge Thor to hire a professional writer and do another pass on the Act 1 and 2 and try to address the issue of lack of emotional connection with the player before finishing Act 2 and before working on Act 3. Having a writer work on this doesn't mean he loses control of the direction of the story, right? Of the overall arc. It just means that there's a writer there to sanitize and clean up the way that you deliver the story so that the emotional moments in the story actually land and resonate with the player. This is like, I cannot stress enough how important this is for the success of the game. So before we go any further, and before I tell you whether I recommend you buy Heartbound or not, please consider liking this video and subscribing if you want to hear more level-headed takes on various drama from someone who actually works in the video game industry. I'll be posting an entire video on Stop Killing Games as well pretty soon, and all the reasons why it's not exactly what it seems to be, and it's going to be a bad thing for gamers if it becomes legislation. So stick around for that as well and subscribe. Now, would I recommend Heartbound? Well, in total, it took me around 5 hours to complete it. To complete the early access version, which consists of Act 1 and maybe half of Act 2. So whether or not you want to buy the game depends heavily on your expectations. If you want a complete experience with a concluded story, Heartbound is not there yet. Be warned. The game has been in development for, I think, 6 years or a little longer than that. It hasn't been fast by any stretch of the imagination. So there may be a couple of years before the game is complete, if we are to extrapolate. So keep in mind, what you're buying now is an early access game. Having said that, let's discuss whether the amount of content currently in the game justifies the price, which is $10 in the US, a bit less in other regions. It's adjusted to each country's economy, which is nice. So if you take your time to play the game and take in the experience, it offers around 5 hours of gameplay so far. If you only do one route, the one that I did took 5 hours, and it is either good or neutral route. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. But that's the route that I suspect most people will. And the verdict, I did not feel like I wasted those 5 hours, I'll be honest. I had a decent time playing it, so it gets a thumbs up from me on Steam. I will upvote it on Steam. If you're fully aware of the caveats I mentioned and are okay with just having a relaxing way to pass the time, buy it. If you expect a completed experience, innovative gameplay, or are involved or an involved immersive story, it is better that you wait until the game is officially completed and launched. The game has a lot of potential and I would say a pretty solid foundation. The world building is going in the right direction, the art and music are wonderful, and with the correct adjustments, it has the potential to become a 9 out of 10 game. But overall, at the moment, the score I'm giving it is a 7 out of 10, realistically speaking. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I tried to keep it as unbiased as possible. I also collected a bunch of notes and put together feedback for what can be improved in the game, and I wrote it down as I was playing. So I'll be leaving it here at the end on fast forward. Enjoy and see you next time.